Alright, I'm going to have to work quickly now because time is of the essence and there's still a lot to cover. I prefaced this entire presentation on the statement that without even having to understand the words of these holy books or how they're translated, via the numbers alone you could extract, deduce a lot of mathematical reasoning, if not actual formula. And the words just happen to come into the lesson because it is actually more than one lesson in one. It's two in one on its face at the very beginning, because this is not only about some interesting number play, which is a lot more fun than basic arithmetic, but it's about human psychology, aspects where, just like is in math and logic, sometimes the absence of a word or a single word can trigger an entire range of emotions and consequences. And perhaps it's for this reason that Solomon is the, what you would say, penultimate example of too much information and too much power. And there are so many other colloquial phrases that seem to resonate in the same fashion. For instance, as we just discovered with the illustration that we left off with about Solomon, this great king, the Gospels, the writers of the Gospels, certainly meant for us to examine this person at length and to find out, using these little number algorithms, if you will, to demonstrate that there's so much more going on in the human psyche. Perhaps there's a bit of Solomon in all of us, and we have to understand there are underlying factors. There are lessons to be learned about Solomon and from Solomon in his own words. But fascinating part about it all is his 11s and 9s get us there. And I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible, but let's do something right now. It said array Solomon. So here is one array. I don't know if we can make out all these numbers, but I've just listed chapters 1 through 11. There are actually 22, but only the first 11 are about Solomon. And then the terminal verse numbers. And there's that 153 that we locked in on earlier, and it ends in 1143. And I'm going to do this over again and blow it up because there are so many ways you can just crunch these numbers together using the little tricks we learned already, and learn more about the interrelationship of 9 and 11. And what's more, we might even begin to see this intuitive development of utilizing these scriptural placeholders, they're called colons, as just placeholders. Because we're going to spend some time really getting to know this Greek letter sigma and this little formula here, which you can see says n plus 1 in parentheses, and I guess when there's no operator, we times it. And so here's one number, whatever it is, plus the next number, or rather, the number plus the next increment. For instance, if this were 12, then n plus 1 would be 13. And that times that, divided by 2, equals the sum of whatever n was. And that's really not too clear right now, but you're going to really appreciate how it matters, because knowing how to use sums will help you to pick off some other interesting relationships based on the way they formatted these numbers. And so on. This is only half of it. And further along, we're going to understand something about symmetry. And by that I mean this. This is a table of sums. Anybody could make one. It's not your standard fourth grade times table, where you go 1, 0 to 12, and that way, and you end up with 144 at that corner. And it's pretty handy, and it helps you to memorize your numbers, and that's really good, because we really need to work on these kind of little basic things. Calculators may not be around forever. Anyway, the point of this is that although I've represented it in row and column form, it actually does extend in one direction, if you will, or any direction you want to go as numbers increase in size. But try to think of it as just wrapping around as these little triangles get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it might not be obvious what the use of that is. But if you can get this formula in your head pretty quick, and it won't take long if you just use the first 5 or 6 numbers, you can develop the kinds of conditioning that will help you to become a whiz at things like calculus and trigonometry and all that stuff that seems to be so elusive. Because once you take the mystery out of it, what they formally teach you won't quite be that mysterious at all. In fact, when I'm done with this little lesson, you might begin to be skeptical of the usefulness of having the same things repeated and regurgitated year upon year upon year, when you can really get it all through a little common sense learning and with the Bible, or someone who understands the Bible as a teaching tool to be your guide. You need not wither away year after year wondering what does it all mean, because the applications are certainly there, but before you sink your teeth into any kind of material usefulness for something like this, you really need to see the moral lessons that go with it. Now, we were kind of stuck on the number 9 and 11 for a while, and there is a way to go through the Bible and jump back and forth between Old and New Testament, just changing the place of the numbers on the other side of that scriptural placeholder we call the colon. I'll show you an example of that right now. We'll go to, any one of these will have this. We'll go to Genesis. Go to Genesis 9. Let me see, we did 11 already, didn't we? What's in 9:11? I wonder what's in there. Let's just look at that. There's always something interesting. Maybe it's got some more numbers to look at. 911. Oh, here we go. Wait, let's go to 9. 99. This is God speaking. And as for me, here I am establishing my covenant with you and with your offspring after you. That's nice. Oh, and go to 10. And with every living soul that is with you among fowls, among beasts, and among all living creatures of the earth, with you from all those things out of the ark, for every living creature of the ark. Okay, so this is post-flood. And here is 911. Yes, I do establish my covenant with you. No more flesh will be cut off by waters of a deluge. And no more will there occur a deluge to bring the earth to ruin. Okay. So here's the key. Looking for 9s and 22s. And here's verse 9, 22. Later Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and went telling it to his two brothers outside. Okay, that's bad. Something happens. There's a storyline. 9:22. This was the first book of the Old Testament, the Torah itself. Let's see what Revelations did. The very last book. Let's see what that says. Oh. And we have Revelation 22:9. Oh, but he tells me, be careful, do not do that. All I am is a fellow slave of you and of your brothers who are prophets, and of those who, observing the words of the scroll, worship God. He also tells me, well, see, I want to read everything that has 9, 10, and 11, and any combination of it. But you could do that and never see anything mathematical. It's all very stimulating to read. So there it is. There's a injunction. Don't do that. Here's another one. Let's go to Genesis. Go back to Genesis 22:9. Is that where we're going? 22:9. What do you think that's going to say? Finally, they reached the place that the true God had designated to him, and Abraham built an altar there and set the wood in order and bound Isaac his son hand and foot and put him upon the altar and on top of the wood. Whoa! Better read the rest of this, huh? 9, 10, 11. Then Abraham put out his hand and took the slaughtering knife to kill his son. 22:11. But God's angel began calling to him out of the heavens and saying, Abraham, Abraham, to which he answered, here I am. And he went on to say, do not put out your hand. There. 22:9. Wow. See? Think about it. They do that in almost every one of these books. And some of it, not just the Torah, but it's also in the books about Solomon. And so, you need to take this all with a grain of salt. And so here's something you find out if you were ready just the books of Solomon. Well, I didn't write it down because, like I said, I'm going to do it again, but you take turn on verse 53, starting at 1 Kings 1. Take it all the way to the end of the story, which is verse 43. You add all these verses up, you're going to get 434. Now that's probably doesn't mean anything, right? Well, it is interesting, but as a matter of fact, here in verse 434, you'll notice why 434, that makes 11 again. And here, we're saying something a little bit more curious. 4 and 3 is 7, or 3 and 4 is 7. Another 11. And there are other interesting aspects to this as well that we're going to drill down on that. Let's just go and see what might be at 434, right? And this is the beauty of this math and this psychology, because they really want you to see this stuff. Let's go to 1 Kings 4:34. And everybody knows this. This is the big deal about King Solomon. 4:34. And they kept coming from all the peoples to hear Solomon's wisdom, even from all the kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom. And every one of these Bibles is going to really, really embellish that. See what's chlorophyll doing on. But we don't know half of it, do we? No. This is what's interesting. You take that 434, which makes 11, and divide that in half. What do you get? 217. 217. Well, now that's just 217. That's 10. That's 1. That's really odd, isn't it? You take that 11, or the number that gives you 11, divide it in 2, and you reduce that, and you get another number, which, strange, isn't it? Anyway, what does it say for? Oh, I just told you, right? Let's go to 217. This is what's so funny about this. Because what happens to 217? What is that, 217? 217. And he went on to say, please say to Solomon the king that he should give me Abishag, the Shunammite, as a wife. What's that got to do with anything? Well, if you read the rest of this, immediately, this is verse 25. Immediately King Solomon sent by means of Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, and he proceeded to fall upon him so that he died. So, this is pretty ugly stuff. So the 11s are always interesting. So let's just see what happens here in verse 11. And the days that David had reigned over Israel were 40 years. In Hebron he had reigned 11 years, and in Jerusalem, 7 years, and in Jerusalem he had reigned 33 years. That's interesting. 33 verse 11 thing. And here in 22, this is it. At this King Solomon answered and said to his mother, and why are you requesting Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Request also for him the kingship, even for him, and for Abiathar the priest, and for Joab the son of Zeruiah? So, his half-brother asked for Abishag. Here in 2:17, Solomon flipped out, relates this request with the whole kingdom. Now, Abishag was very special, let's make no doubt about that, because the very beginning of this is about David on his deathbed and the virgin girl they chose for him. You get that? He had no sex with her. So she was special. David died, and the girl was what? Still. So the older brother coveted this girl. And so what did David do? Well, we go back to Genesis and see what Cain did to Abel, don't we? Yeah. Older brother killed younger. But the 11s take you there. And in this case, the 434 they broke out in this array was leading us to this observation about the horrible stuff that can happen in the minds of great men. The greatest, Solomon. You know, he starts off killing his brother because of this. Who knows what made him do it. Anyway, so much more to this guy Solomon. So what do we want to talk? We're going to do more on this, on Solomon. But right now, I think it's important to really start showing you about this sun on this table, because just like I can fold this, well, if I could fold it. I had something folded a moment ago. Where'd you go? If I were to fold this paper directly in half, put a crease in it, it would have an axis or a line. So imagine a line going through the center of this table, which has 20 columns and, of course, any number of rows possible. But in this fashion, and starting from counting number 1 to 19, I'm able to get quite a bit of information. And what I want to point out is that along this axis of symmetry, there seems to be a repeating digit in the units column. In this case, at the sum of 3, or rather the sum of 2 and 22 and 42 and 62, all of these, the last digit will be 3. And it starts out, of course, the sum of 1 is 1, and the sum of 2 is 3, we said that, and the sum of 3 is 6. And there they go, 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, 21, 28, and on and on and on, to the sum of 19 over there, 190. And what's interesting about this table is that I'm tempted to right away just start marking it up with markers and crayons and looking in scriptures for patterns to make a picture, and I did that. And it's a little premature to do it right now, but there are some interesting aspects of symmetry if you start plotting some of these very significant numbers. For instance, 153 is over here, and one step down is 666, and this is an interesting number, 1540, because just 11 more makes that 1551, and that's a actual significant verse in the Old Testament, and I'm going to actually show you something about that. And way down here are some other numbers that may become involved with the Book of Kings, with a little, addition and subtraction based on the numbers we find there. And then we may just actually see something develop. But the usual stuff is here. For instance, on one side of the axis here is 50. That's the sum of 50, 1,275. Right on the other side is the sum of 49. And believe it or not, we can also apply our little reduction scheme to this. And then we wind up with a repeating series of digits that also seem to repeat about this axis. And that will be the 1, the 3, the 6, and the 9. Kind of like a clock. The way we have our clock set up, 3, 6, 9. Right back to 0. 1. Could be something very similar to that. Now, why do I want to really emphasize that? Because 19 is involved in creation, just like Fibonacci number is a new way of talking about this pattern we see here on this pine cone. And dandelions are another flower, I forget which one it is, and galaxies. They seem to express this idea. And it's funny because our brain has something called a pineal gland. It even looks like this. They even have one of these giant things in the Vatican courtyard. I'm told 2 of them. I don't know why you'd have 2. Maybe it's just 1. But that's interesting because this baby controls all the other 6. 7 planets. 7 heavens. It's interesting. Parallels these words. Now, I was going to talk about the bee. Remember that clipboard? Where'd it go? Well, there it is. 9/11, we're just talking about that all the time now. First Kings were there. Mr. Tyndall, God bless him. because he would have loved what we're doing right here. And Mr. Fibonacci, we could have more to say about all the gentlemen of that era and interesting associations that they had with church or non-secular. Or is that sectarian? I forget. I get confused with these things. But once upon a time, you couldn't do what I'm doing. In fact, what I'm about to do is tantamount to insulting some of these radical Islam guys, as they say. Because this thing ISIS is just a nasty stain on, what really is probably, in my best guess, equally as important as understanding that the Torah, or understanding that Christianity relates to the Torah. And if you make that breakthrough, and you can see how you look into the Torah, then obviously it has to be part of some larger compendium of knowledge. So when you get to Islam, you'll notice that it bears all the same mathematical signatures of logic, mathematics, and human behavior. And it is meant to be understood as a single dialogue from the Creator via an agent called Gabriel to this man. And then it was put together, put back together verbally until there were enough people to remember it in a language, in a precise metric. A song, just like the bards of old, Shakespeare, the Greeks. As long as you had people who could remember the song, that's all you need. And even non-sighted people could remember a song, perhaps even persons with hearing problems. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that too much. But you never know what value there is in the smallest little ditty. A lot of wisdom. So, like I said, we didn't know half of it. Solomon was great, all right. Boy, oh boy, did he have a temper. Now, I mentioned the beat. What's really great about the beat is that I can go to him right now. But before I do that, I'm going to show you something that's fascinating in the New Testament. This is in 1 Peter 3:10. You got to read this because this is where we go from not just math and psychology, but stellar evolution, science, the kind of stuff that we weren't doing in modern age a few decades ago. But here, these guys, wow, where is it? Where is 3:10? Oh my goodness, did I lose that? Come on now. What does it say in 3:10? Come on now. 3:10, 3:10, 3:10, 3:10, 3:10. Oh goodness. just stop right here and start over.